Here is something medicine has known for years, and most people over 60 have never been told. Every night, while you are asleep, your brain runs a biological operation that decides which memories survive and which ones disappear. It repairs damaged connections, clears out waste, and locks in everything that happened during the day worth keeping. That process is not optional. It is not a bonus feature. It is the entire reason sleep exists. And for millions of Americans over 60, that operation is failing silently, one night at a time. Not because of aging, not because the brain has given up, but because of one specific mistake most people over 60 make every single night without knowing it. And I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. My name is Dr. Robert Miller. I spent 35 years practicing internal medicine. For the last decade of my career, I became obsessed with something almost nobody talks about in a standard 15-minute appointment. I started reading the science that does not make it into the brochures. Studies behind paywalls, clinical trials from research institutions you never hear about, data that quietly sits in medical journals while your doctor runs 2 minutes late and hands you a printed pamphlet on the way out. I want to share what I found. In this video, I am going to show you 4 things you can eat or drink before bed that directly support your brain's nightly repair work. And one of them comes from a Harvard study that followed over 16,000 people for more than 20 years. What they discovered about its power to protect aging brains stopped me cold. It is not what you would guess, and it is the last item on this list. Before I start, I want to ask you something personal. How would you describe your memory right now? Sharp, average, or slipping? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one, and I will reply when I can. The first item coming up may look ordinary. What it does to your brain tonight is anything but. Here is the mistake. You go to bed tired. You close your eyes, and you assume that rest will take care of the rest. But your brain does not just need rest. It needs a very specific chemical signal to begin its nighttime repair work. And most people over 60 go to sleep without giving it that signal. That signal is melatonin, not the synthetic kind in a pill from the drugstore shelf. I am talking about the kind your body is supposed to make on its own, at the right time, in the right quantity, through a pathway that in many people over 60 has gone quiet. When that signal is weak or delayed, your brain never fully enters the deep repair phases. The memories from your day do not get filed properly. The cellular repair that protects your neurons gets skipped, and you wake up having slept 8 hours but feeling like you slept 4. Tart cherry juice is one of the most underappreciated solutions to this problem in the entire nutrition literature. Montmorency tart cherries are one of the few foods on Earth that contain meaningful natural melatonin, along with something even more important, a compound that actually protects your body's own tryptophan. Let me explain why that matters. Tryptophan is the raw material your brain uses to make serotonin, which it then converts into melatonin. As you age, an enzyme in your body called indoleamine 2,3-dioxygenase becomes more active. Its job is to break tryptophan down before it can reach your brain. The compounds in tart cherry juice actually inhibit that enzyme. They slow it down. They protect your tryptophan, so more of it survives long enough to become the melatonin your brain needs to begin its repair cycle. That is not a supplement doing something artificial. That is food removing a roadblock your own biology has built up over decades. A randomized controlled trial published in the journal Food Function in 2019 tested this directly in adults between the ages of 65 and 80. 37 participants consumed daily Montmorency tart cherry juice for 12 weeks. The cherry juice group improved significantly on paired associates learning, which is your brain's ability to connect names to faces, words to meanings, and events to their details. They also improved on visual sustained attention, the ability to hold focus and catch important information without losing track. Think about what that means for you. Those are exactly the skills that start slipping when the brain is not getting adequate deep sleep night after night. That is, the feeling of searching for a word you know. That is, walking past someone you have met 3 times and drawing a blank on their name. The mechanism here is the full chain of events. Tart cherry compounds protect tryptophan from being broken down. More tryptophan reaches the brain. The brain converts it to serotonin and then to melatonin. Melatonin signals the brain to enter its deep repair phases. And those deep phases are where memory gets consolidated. Think of it like a factory that only runs at night. Tart Cherry does not run the factory for you. It makes sure the doors unlock on time. The most common mistake people make with Tart Cherry is using the sweetened juice from the juice aisle. That version has had the polyphenols diluted and the sugar added, which actually works against sleep quality. You want an unsweetened concentrate. 1 to 2 tablespoons of Montmorency Tart Cherry concentrate, stirred into a small glass of water, taken 30 to 45 minutes before you plan to sleep, not earlier. The timing matters because you want the melatonin signal and the tryptophan protection arriving at the same window your brain normally expects them. Within the first week, most people notice they are falling asleep more easily and waking up less in the middle of the night. Within 2 to 3 weeks, the shift in morning clarity becomes harder to ignore. You start the day from a more rested brain, and that difference follows you all day long. But falling asleep more easily is only half the problem. The deeper issue is what is happening inside the brain cells themselves while you sleep. And that is where the next item on this list does something most people have genuinely never heard about. You have heard about brain cells dying as you age, but what most people do not know is that the brain has a repair mechanism for this. There is a protein your body is supposed to be making continuously throughout your life that maintains and regrows nerve cell connections. It is called nerve growth factor. And in most adults over 60, levels of this protein have been quietly declining for years. This is not a minor inconvenience. Nerve growth factor is the signal that tells your neurons to maintain their branching connections, the tiny extensions that reach out and touch neighboring cells to transmit information. When nerve growth factor falls, those connections retract, they thin out. The brain's communication network becomes less dense, and the result is what people usually describe as general mental dullness. Not a specific memory problem, a slower, hazier version of thought that they notice but cannot quite explain. Lion's mane mushroom is the only food on Earth that contains compounds clinically proven to stimulate nerve growth factor synthesis directly inside the central nervous system. I want to be precise about that. Most substances cannot cross the blood-brain barrier, the protective membrane around the brain that filters out almost everything. The compounds in lion's mane, called erinacines, are small enough and structured correctly to pass through it. Once they do, they reach the brain's own glial cells and instruct them to produce more nerve growth factor from inside. A landmark, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial published in Phytotherapy Research in 2009 tested this in 30 adults between the ages of 50 and 80, all of whom had been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. They received 3 grams of dried lion's mane mushroom daily for 16 weeks. Cognitive scores were measured at 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and 16 weeks using the revised Hasegawa Dementia Scale, a clinical tool specifically designed to detect meaningful changes in memory and thinking. At every single measurement point, the lion's mane group scored significantly higher than the placebo group, and scores continued rising throughout the entire 16 weeks, suggesting the benefit was cumulative, building on itself week after week. Think about what that means for you. If you have noticed that thinking feels slower, that it takes longer to find words or work through a problem, that is not random deterioration. It is often a sign that nerve growth factor has dropped low enough that your neural network is starting to thin. That process can be interrupted. The mistake people make with lion's mane is buying it as a coffee additive or a snack product. At those doses and in those forms, you are getting a fraction of what was used in the clinical research. What you want is a capsule or powder, standardized to contain both the fruiting body and mycelium extracts. The reason you take it at night is timing. Your brain is most actively building and repairing neural architecture during deep sleep. Taking lion's mane 30 minutes before bed means the erinacines are in your bloodstream as that repair window opens. 2 to 3 grams is the clinically studied range. Start at the lower end. Within the first 3 to 4 weeks, many people describe a subtle but noticeable improvement in the speed of word retrieval, the ability to follow a conversation without losing the thread, and a general sharpness that feels different from caffeine. It is not stimulating. It is more like the mental background static has turned down a few notches. Something important is worth planting here. I mentioned a Harvard study involving more than 16,000 people that changed how I think about memory and aging. It involves the 4th item on this list. The findings are not subtle, but before I get there, I want to tell you about the 3rd item, because it addresses something most conventional medicine completely ignores when it comes to memory in people over 60. If you are still watching, I am glad, because what is coming next is the one I wish I had known about 20 years earlier in my practice. If you are finding value in what we are covering today, please subscribe. The most important item on this list is still ahead, and it comes from the most surprising source I have encountered in all my years of reading this research. Hit that button so you do not miss it. There is a hormone in your body that most people over 60 think of as a stress response, something that happens when you are nervous or overwhelmed. What most people do not know is that this same hormone surges quietly during sleep in adults with long-term chronic stress. And when it does not just disrupt your rest. It actively destroys the memory consolidation process your brain is trying to run. That hormone is cortisol. And here is the part your doctor is almost certainly not telling you. You do not have to feel stressed for cortisol to be elevated. After years of accumulated life stress, the body can get locked into a pattern of releasing cortisol at night, even when you consciously feel calm. Your sleep tracker might show 7 or 8 hours, but inside your brain, cortisol is blocking the slow-wave sleep phases where memories get filed, and it is preventing the hippocampus, your brain's memory center, from doing its consolidation work. You wake up foggy. You feel like you did not really rest, and no amount of willpower or caffeine fixes a brain that could not run its nighttime repair cycle. Ashwagandha root extract is the most clinically supported natural solution I have found to this specific problem. It contains a group of compounds called withanolides that act on the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is the body's master stress regulation system. Think of this system like a thermostat that controls how much cortisol your body produces. In people with chronic low-grade stress, that thermostat gets stuck on a setting that is too high. Withanolides help reset it toward normal. Lower cortisol at night means deeper sleep. Deeper sleep means the brain's memory consolidation process can actually complete. A prospective, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study published in the Journal of Dietary Supplements in 2017 enrolled 50 adults with mild cognitive impairment and gave them ashwagandha root extract for 8 weeks. The results across multiple standardized memory tests were significant. The treatment group showed meaningful improvements in immediate memory, general memory, executive function, sustained attention, and the speed at which the brain processes new information. Improvements were statistically significant across 8 different subtests of the Wechsler memory scale. Think about what that means for you. Executive function is the ability to coordinate your thoughts and make decisions quickly. Sustained attention is the ability to stay with a task without losing the thread. These are exactly the things that feel diminished when nighttime cortisol has been quietly preventing your brain from completing its repair cycle for months or years. The mechanism is the full loop. Withanolides lower nighttime cortisol. With cortisol lower, the brain can enter deep, slow-wave sleep. In that phase, the hippocampus replays the day's experiences and transfers them into longer-term storage. The conversations you had, the name you were told, the task you were trying to remember for tomorrow. All of that processing requires cortisol to stand down. The most common mistake people make with ashwagandha is taking it in the morning as an energy supplement. For memory consolidation, the timing is completely different. You want to take it at night, specifically to help cortisol come down before sleep. Look for a supplement standardized to withanolides, and start with 300 milligrams taken 45 minutes before bed. If you are on blood pressure medication, heart medication, or thyroid medication, please speak with your doctor before starting, because ashwagandha can affect how some of those medications work. Within the first 2 weeks, most people notice their sleep feels more complete. Not necessarily longer, but deeper. The difference is not immediately obvious, but around weeks 3 and 4, you often begin noticing that you are recalling things more easily in the morning, that your thinking feels less effortful, and that the fog that has been sitting at the edges of your mind is beginning to lift. Now, I want to keep the promise I made at the beginning, because the last item on this list is the one that stopped me in my tracks. This is the item I promised you in the opening, the one from the Harvard study. And when I describe what was found, I want you to pay attention not to how it works biochemically, but to what it means for the choices you make every single night before you go to sleep. Wild blueberries, or more precisely, the anthocyanins in wild blueberries. These are the natural pigments that give them their deep blue-purple color, and they are, in my reading of the research, among the most powerful memory protective compounds in the human diet. But most people are getting far too little of them. Here is the Harvard study. Researchers from Brigham and Women's Hospital and Harvard Medical School, as part of the long-running Nurses' Health Study, tracked dietary habits and cognitive function in over 16,000 women aged 70 and older across a span of more than 20 years. They followed these women at regular intervals and measured cognitive performance multiple times. What they found, published in the Annals of Neurology in 2012, was that women who consumed more blueberries showed significantly slower rates of cognitive decline. The effect was so consistent that the researchers estimated it was equivalent to delaying cognitive aging by up to 2.5 years. Think about what that means for you. 2.5 years is not a small number when you are talking about the brain. It is the difference between being sharp at 78 and being sharp at 78 while others at your age are already struggling. And this was not from a supplement. This was from food, from a handful of blueberries each week. The reason is buried in the biology. Anthocyanins from blueberries are among the very few dietary compounds that can cross the blood-brain barrier and accumulate directly in the hippocampus, the region where new memories are formed. Once there, they reduce neuroinflammation, the low-level chronic swelling inside brain tissue that silently degrades neural communication over years. Neuroinflammation does not feel like a headache. It feels like your thinking has gotten slower and hazier over time, and you assumed that was just age. In many cases, it is not just age. It is a brain that has been inflamed for years and has never been given what it needs to calm down. Wild blueberries are significantly more potent than the cultivated blueberries in most grocery stores. Their smaller size means a higher ratio of skin to flesh, and most of the anthocyanins are concentrated in the skin. Frozen wild blueberries, which you can find at most major grocery chains, are equally effective. Freezing actually breaks down the cell walls and makes the anthocyanins more available to absorb. Half a cup to 1 cup eaten at night, around 30 minutes before bed, is the target. Eat them slowly, chew thoroughly. Do not add sugar. If fresh or frozen wild blueberries are unavailable, look for a freeze-dried wild blueberry powder from a reputable source, and stir a tablespoon into plain yogurt. The reason evening timing matters is that your brain's inflammatory and repair processes peak during sleep. Getting anthocyanins into your system before that window opens means your brain is better equipped to dampen inflammation and carry out its nightly maintenance work. Most people report that within 10 days of making this a consistent nighttime habit, they begin recalling names and details with slightly less effort. Within 4 to 6 weeks, the cumulative effect is often more striking. The mental clarity feels different, not dramatic, but real. Let me give you something practical you can take into your bedroom tonight. In the morning, start your day with nothing special beyond what you already do. But tonight, about an hour before you want to sleep, begin a short sequence that takes less than 5 minutes. 30 to 45 minutes before bed, prepare 1 tablespoon of unsweetened Montmorency tart cherry concentrate in a small glass of water and drink it slowly. This is when you give your brain its melatonin signal and protect the tryptophan pathway that makes deep sleep possible. At the same time, take your lion's mane supplement. Look for a product with both fruiting body and mycelium, standardized for erinacines, at a dose between 2 and 3 grams. This is what tells your brain to continue building and maintaining its nerve connections overnight. Also at this same window, take your ashwagandha, 300 milligrams, standardized to withanalydes. This is what helps cortisol stand down, so your brain can actually enter the deep sleep phases where memory consolidation happens. If you are on any daily medications, check with your physician before adding ashwagandha, particularly if you take thyroid, blood pressure, or blood sugar medications. About 30 minutes before bed, eat your half cup of wild blueberries. Chew slowly. Let the anthocyanins begin their work. For week 1, start with just the tart cherry and the blueberries. Let your body adjust. Most people notice improved sleep quality within the first 3 to 5 days. In week 2, add the lion's mane. In week 3, if you feel you need additional support with sleep depth and mental fogginess, introduce the ashwagandha. By week 4, most people have a clear sense of the difference this combination is making. The morning fog is lighter. Word retrieval is slightly faster. The feeling of being mentally present in a conversation starts returning. These are not dramatic transformations in a week. They are the steady, compounding results of a brain that is finally getting what it needs to do its job. I want to close with something personal. For most of my career, when patients came to me and said their memory felt off, that they were losing words mid-sentence, that they walked into rooms and forgot why they went, I told them what I had been trained to tell them, that this was a normal part of aging, that there was nothing significant to worry about unless it got much worse. I do not say that anymore, because the research I spent the last decade reading told me something different. It told me that the brain's capacity to maintain itself, to repair connections, to consolidate memory, does not simply evaporate after 60. It gets starved of what it needs. And when you give it back the right materials at the right time, it responds. Here is the first open loop I asked you to hold. I told you that there was something happening in your brain's nightly repair process that most people over 60 have never been told about. That something is this. The brain does not just need sleep. It needs a precisely timed sequence of nutrients, hormones, and anti-inflammatory compounds to run its overnight maintenance. Without those, sleep is just rest. With them, sleep is repair. And here is the second thing I asked you to remember. I told you the most powerful item on this list came from the most surprising source. A food that most people think of as something small and sweet that stains your shirt. A Harvard study that followed over 16,000 people for decades and found that eating it regularly could literally delay the aging of your brain by years. It was the blueberry, not a drug, not a prescription, something you can buy frozen at a grocery store tonight and eat before bed. The single most important thing I want you to hear is this. You are not imagining the changes you have noticed in your memory. What you are feeling is real. It is not just age. It is a brain that has been running on insufficient support for too long. And it is never too late to change that. Tonight, before bed, start with one small step. The TART cherry concentrate. 1 tablespoon in water. That is all. Let it be the first night you choose your brain on purpose. What we covered today, Montmorency TART cherry concentrate, taken 30 to 45 minutes before bed, protects the tryptophan pathway and delivers natural melatonin to support deep, restorative sleep and improved memory consolidation, as shown in a 12-week trial with adults between 65 and 80. Lion's mane mushroom, taken the same evening, stimulates nerve growth factor production from inside the brain itself, with clinical evidence from a 16-week study in adults with mild cognitive impairment. Ashwagandha root extract, taken nightly in a dose standardized to withanalydes, helps lower the elevated cortisol that silently blocks deep sleep and memory processing in many adults over 60, with significant improvements across multiple memory measures in a controlled 8-week trial. And wild blueberries, eaten 30 minutes before bed, deliver anthocyanins directly to the hippocampus, where they reduce the neuroinflammation that ages the brain from the inside out, backed by more than 20 years of data from a Harvard study of 16,000 older women. Which of these 4 have you heard of before? And is there one you think you might try first? Let me know below. Your answer helps me understand what is actually useful to you. If you want to keep learning about what the research says your brain needs as you get older, subscribing means you will not miss what we cover next. I share the kind of clinical detail that does not make it into most health content online. Next time, I want to look at something most people over 60 experience every single day without realizing it is connected to memory. A pattern in how and when you eat that may be quietly working against the same repair process we talked about today. You will not want to miss it. One final note from me as a physician. Everything discussed in this video is for educational purposes and is not a substitute for medical advice. Please talk with your doctor before starting any new supplement, especially if you are taking medications for blood pressure, thyroid function, blood sugar, or heart conditions. Several of these items can interact with medications, and your safety always comes first.